of Texas Hall of Fame Diving Invitational. One of those quality teams here. Dave Parrington from the University of Tennessee, his 29th season at the helm, 14-time SEC Coach of the Year.
Dave Parrington is such a staple, not just in NCAA diving and Tennessee diving, but USA diving. He's coached Olympians, NCAA champions, and is just consistently has somebody in an NCAA finals when it matters. 8
NCAA champions and has Colin Zhang here with him. He will dive third from last. There were 26 entries this morning, 6 dives that placed 8 into the finals. None of that carries over. They'll dive from 8th to 1st from this morning's finish to determine a champion here in the men's 3-meter.
They will, and those final 3 divers are who are going to be really exciting, throwing some huge dives halfway through the season. We'll see how well they're able to compete them.
Starts with the senior from Texas A&M, grew up in Baildon, United Kingdom, Sam Thornton. So impressive yesterday in his 3rd place finish. Steady Eddie, every dive we saw from him.
He doesn't miss a thing. It really is impressive to be that consistent. Oh, I was worried I jinxed him a little. I might have a little bit. A front 3.5 pike. Doesn't get the best of hurdles, which is really important on a dive like this. So he gets a little bit too much momentum and can't control it there at the end.
We will see this dive 2 more times in round number 1. 54.25 for Thornton. 6 dives scored by 7 judges. Cumulative highest score wins. First look at Ben Bramley in a finals. Did not dive in yesterday's 1-meter. Freshman from Wesley, Massachusetts.
Oh, wow. What an excellent way to start off his finals. There is no splash on this dive. What an incredible entry. Great dive in the air, too. Really beautiful pike position. But what I'm most impressed about, and the lasting impression that these judges are going to see, is that perfect entry into the water.
Judge is impressed indeed. Nothing lower than a 7.5 for an even 69 for the freshman from Purdue. The loudest cheering contingent we have heard amongst all the teams. Briadam Herrera.
And this is an interesting one. Briadam Herrera is a phenomenal 3-meter diver who struggled in the preliminary rounds. And you know what? It looks like he's out for vengeance. That was a great double out to start the event.
Finished 6th this morning after finishing 5th yesterday in the 1-meter.
And I love this split screen. You're able to see underwater what these divers are doing in an effort to clean up that entry and minimize their splash as much as they can.
4 8s in there for Herrera, the redshirt senior from Havana, Cuba. 2016-17 ACC Men's Diver of the Year. Did not compete 17-18. Still possibly recovering from that injury, medical redshirt. First look at Greg Duncan, sophomore from Oakton, Virginia, diving for Purdue.
Oh, you know what? His team's cheering for him, and they should be. What an excellent front 3.5 pike. It's a pretty easy dive for him, so he doesn't look very nervous at all. Very confident on the end of the board. Comes out of that pike position with plenty of time to grab his hand so that he can get a good entry on the water. Right there.
Saw that dive from Thornton to kick off the competition. 5 8s, 2 7.5s is 69.75. Duncan trailing Herrera. David Hoffer, the graduate student from Arizona State, saw him finish 8th yesterday on the 1-meter board. Graduated earlier this spring with a bachelor's in economics and business as well.
Again, we are seeing nothing but great diving so far in this first round. Probably starts with this dive because he's very comfortable with it. It's not a difficult dive for him. He stays over his toes, which is a tricky part of this dive, making sure you keep your balance on the end of the board. It's hard to kind of stay confident when you're basically throwing your body back towards a diving board. Solid dive.
Seeing really solid scores as well for these competitors, 7, 7.5s. And this is a big dive for Colin Zhang, champion yesterday. The redshirt senior from China, 3-time All-American 2018, diver of the year. Has won both the 1 meter and 3 meter at every event he has competed at this fall, 5 total thus far. Second place on the 3 meter board at last year's NCAAs. His first dive.
Oh, he was looking to improve from this morning. This is the dive I mentioned earlier that him, Hernandez, and Windle all struggled on in the preliminary rounds, which is ironic because it's their easiest dive. He just doesn't seem to control it as much as he needs to when he comes out of that pike position and lets it wash over a bit.
Had a score of 54 in the morning session. See if there's an improvement upon such.
A little bit, 58.5 now in finals, but still not what he was looking for.
Hernandez up on the same dive. Juana Jr. from San Nicolas de los Garza, Mexico. 3-time All-American as well. 4th place yesterday on the 1 meter. He has won both the 1 meter and the 3 meter in all events this fall.
Oh, and he does the same thing. These divers, it's interesting because they are competing some of the most difficult dives that you'll see in the world in his triple out and his front 4.5. And then these more simple dives that he's been doing for a while, he's just unable to control it. A little too much strength, too much power, and way past vertical.
43.50 was the score in the morning session for Hernandez, and this will be off of that mark, lower at 42 even. So those are the two, Kat, that you had circled early for Zhang and Hernandez to kick things off those 205B. They struggled this morning. About the same this evening. Jordan Windle, the sophomore, 3-time All-American as well, in with his first dive.
And he does not struggle on his first dive, to put it lightly. Another front 3.5 pike. We did see this from a few other men in the competition, but we have not seen it executed this well. Not only is that a beautiful position in the air, he completes it so easily. He's a very strong diver, but he also has probably the best entry into the water out of all of the men in this competition if he's able to get a hold of his hand and hit the water right.
Solid dive from Windle. All 8s and 2 8.5s gives him a 74.40, but trails Briadam Herrera. Briadam Herrera had the hardest dive of the opening round with the DD of 3.4, so he is atop the leaderboard. So Herrera, Windle, Duncan, Bramley, Hoffer, Zhang, Thornton, and Hernandez.
A lot of diving left and a lot of big diving. You'll see Juan Hernandez with the most difficult list from here on out, so he does have room to catch back up, but he has dug himself into a bit of a hole.
Much higher degrees of difficulty and more room for variation from the 1 meter to the 3 meter, so those gaps you just talked about can be covered much easier.
They can be, especially once he gets into his last 2 rounds. He can make that up very quickly.
Thornton was an honorable mention All-American last year, finished 12th in the prelims at NCAA, 2nd in the consolation round, 6th at the SEC Championships. Is in with his second dive, the 405B.
Which we've seen from a few other divers. Competed very well. I think he leans a little bit far back from the diving board on his takeoff, so he isn't able to get the momentum that he could off of it. Still plenty of time to complete the dive. Gets a
4.50 for the senior Aggie. Ben Bramley finished 2nd earlier this fall in a double duel against Tennessee and Wisconsin. 2nd versus Notre Dame. 13th at the USA Diving Winter Nationals on the 3 meter board.
Wow, I'm disappointed that this is the first time we've seen him in the competition because he's an excellent diver. A full out there, it's a front 2.5 pike, and in that second flip, he comes out of the pike position and throws a full twist in there. And what's more impressive is that entry into the water.
7.5s to 8, 67.50 for Bramley. Briadam Herrera, the leader after the first dive. Another DD of 3.4 on this inward 3.5 somersault tuck.
Oh, that's disappointing. He is so strong and so powerful. An inward 3.5 tuck is not an easy dive, and he has plenty of time to complete it. Unfortunately, he just can't control it yet. Needed to come out of that tuck much earlier and reach for the water. Instead, he reaches under a little bit and completely over-rotates.
Reflected in the scores, a 35.70, 3s, 3.5s, 4s for the redshirt senior. From Cuba to Miami in 2009. Diving in his final redshirt season is Gregory Duncan. He's in third place after his opening dive. 2 DDs of 3.0, this being 1 out of the 6 for Duncan.
And over-rotates it as well. That's a common trend we're seeing in this back 2.5 pike. Saw the same from Zhang and Hernandez. Great position coming off the diving board. Just comes out of that pike, doesn't see his spot maybe in time, or just doesn't react quick enough. And yet again, another over-rotated back 2.5.
1 4.5, 4 6s in there. 52.50 for Greg Duncan. Second hardest dive of the 6 for David Hoffer on this forward 3.5 somersault pike.
David Hoffer, similar to Sam Thornton, very consistent diver.
Redshirted last year. Competing the 1 meter and 3 meter in NCAAs in 16-17.
It's a beautiful dive. He has a great pike position in the air. Really tight pike here. His chest is laid there right on his legs. Reaches a little bit under himself. So there's a slight over rotation, or at least a splash as a result from it, but a great dive.
65.10. Hoffer trailing Bramley. Forward 2.5 somersault, 1 twist pike. Everything much harder from here on out for Colin Zhang.
Well, that's one way to come back from a rough first round dive. Best dive we've seen in the competition so far. This is going to be tough to beat. A front 2.5, a full twist. He comes out and has completed that twist before he's even gotten past the 3 meter springboard. But what really matters here is that he doesn't make an ounce of splash when he goes in the water. Unbelievable.
Mentioned the second place finish at the NCAAs last year, and look at that.
So the first 9s we've seen.
And a 9.5 from Judge 4 and 81. He was leading after the preliminary rounds last year at NCAA, so he's one of the best in the country. Shows such with that his second dive. Juan Hernandez, disappointing opening round. How does he bounce back with this forward 2.5 somersault 2 twist pike?
This is the same thing we just saw from Colin Zhang, but another twist added on, as we talked about just the level of difficulty that you'll see from Juan Hernandez tonight.
Takes it up another 0.4.
Oh, and he makes it look easy. He is so strong. It is absolutely incredible how strong and powerful he is coming off of the diving board. Unfortunately, he plays it a little too careful, reaching for the water here. Needed to reach a little bit harder in that pike in order to make it all the way around. Just left it just a bit shy.
Hernandez finished 4th last year as a sophomore at NCAAs, won the Zone D championships. Some 5.5s, a couple 6s, 6.5 for 59.50. As Wendell will close out round 2.
With the dreaded back 2.5 pike.
Why is it dreaded?
I don't know. It shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. Some of the dives these guys are doing are so much more difficult, but this has been tough for all of them to control. There it is. Big improvement from his preliminary round and the best back 2.5 pike we've seen tonight. Tight pike position, but comes out right on time. He spots the diving board, knows to come out and reach for the water, and is the first person not to over-rotate that dive.
1.8 in there, couple of 7, 7.5, and even 66 puts him at 140.40. So the big dogs, they're showing out. Jordan Windle atop the leaderboard, Colin Zhang right behind him. The competition heating up, rounds 3 and 4 when we come back. In first right now, Colin Zhang. First yesterday, now in second.
And yet another close race, but I think this is where you're going to see Windle and Zhang start pulling away from the competition with some of the difficult dives that they have coming up.
Start with Sam Thornton. Currently in 6th place. This is the dreaded 205B.
Not for Sam Thornton. He's too consistent. I don't believe it with him.
You put some pressure on.
I did. Oh, and I jinxed him. I'm so sorry, Sam Thornton. That's on me. I think that's on me. You know what? This is the time of year when I think they're trying to work out some of the kinks. Everyone's a little bit off, not the caliber that you'll see from them during NCAAs. They're still tired. They're working their butts off in the weight room. So some people just look a little sluggish, and unfortunately, there he just holds on to that pike a hair too long.
So that 205B continues to trouble all the competitors. Ben Bramley will be up on a 51.54B. This his hardest dive. One we saw Hernandez throw last round.
Ben Bramley really impressing me tonight. A double out there, front 2.5 pike, comes out of the pike position right here and throws 2 full twists in before reaching for the water. Now he's struggling a little bit to get to the water, but still manages to pull it around to vertical.
Rarely have we seen that sort of agreement amongst the judges. All 6.5s and the 1.7 for Ben Bramley. Put him into first place. 202.80 his cumulative score. Briadam Herrera, DD of 3.5. This 307C.
Looking to come back after a tough second round, and unfortunately gets a little hesitant coming out of that reverse 3.5. Doesn't really commit to it, comes out a hair early there. Doesn't reach for the water hard enough to squeak it around, and he looks pretty frustrated at this point.
4.5s, a couple 5s and a 5.5, and even 49 for Briadam Herrera. Duncan in 5th place after 2 dives.
Oh, the same dive we saw from Briadam, but much more successfully completed. Key to this is making sure you are over the end of the diving board and get a solid takeoff from there. He just saw his spot and made sure to come out and reach for the water at the perfect time.
Looked like great height off the hurdle for Duncan. He set him up for success, reflected in the scores for the sophomore from Purdue. Back 2.5 somersault pike for Hoffer.
Yep, and this is usually a very solid dive for him.
You've been saying that for everybody now.
I
The dreaded 205B.
All right, look at that. That was excellent. That was excellent. Him and Jordan Windle so far are the only ones to successfully compete this dive and execute it the way they all know how. He's very comfortable on the end of the diving board, gets a great takeoff, comes out at the perfect time. 8s, 8.5s, well deserved.
Solid 72, 203.10 for Hoffer. Colin Zhang, second place heading into round 3. That's the dive we saw from Bramley. He nailed it to put himself at the time up into first. Hoffer is ahead of him now. Can Zhang jump above both?
If he keeps diving like that, he might be able to. Unfortunately, he left this dive just a little bit short. He could have made it all the way around. Reaching for the water there, just goes to grab his hands a little too early. It's all about timing. So important with these dives. If he waited a fraction of a second longer, he would have gotten a little bit more rotation.
3 6s, the rest 6.5s. So Zhang will go up into first over Hoffer, but by just a point. So Hernandez on his reverse 3.5 somersault tuck. This is the hardest dive we've seen thus far from the junior from LSU.
Oh, and again, he's almost too strong coming off the diving board for his own good. He isn't able to control his entries just yet. He needs to come out of that tuck position much earlier. And again, this is a new pool. This isn't typically where he's diving. This is why they come here, in order to get some experience for what they're going to see in a few months.
6 of the judges saw it as a 4.5. Judge 2, maybe a miskey on this 6. But a disappointing dive for Hernandez, still trying to find his rhythm. Jordan Windle to close out round 3. Reverse 3.5 somersault tuck. That's what we saw from Herrera, and then just from Hernandez.
Oh, he is so consistent on this dive. That is the best dive we've seen, and might be the best dive we'll see all night. I don't know how anyone can top this. Perfect in the air, excellent distance from the board, but he knows exactly where he is and when to reach for the water. And when that guy gets an entry, you won't see a splash.
Saw a great round 2 dive from Zhang. Had some 9s in there, and Windle, the very solid dive to close out round 3. And that will put him well clear at 20.3 points. Jordan Windle atop the leaderboard halfway through the competition.
He is, and this is where it's going to get a little tricky. We're going to see some front 4.5s from a couple of the divers, and if he can nail those, nobody will be able to catch him.
So behind Windle, Zhang, Hoffer, Bramley, Duncan, Herrera, Thornton, who will start off round 4, and Juan Hernandez in 8th. Easiest dive of the 6. Here from Thornton.
Oh, that's a very easy dive for him. A lot of the other athletes here are actually adding another flip and doing a reverse 3.5. So if you're going to simplify your list a bit, you really have to execute this dive perfectly, and unfortunately he doesn't. Over-rotates it, and way too much of a splash to get good scores from these judges.
2 6s, a couple 6.5s, a couple 5.5s, 51.80 for Thornton. As Ben Bramley coming off that great dive we saw round 3. It's been solid thus far. Freshman from Massachusetts.
There we go. Everyone's finding their rhythms on these back 2.5 pikes now. That was phenomenal. Perfect timing. This dive is all timing. You need to come off the board aggressive, but also see your spot perfectly and reach for the water with the right technique in order to stop the momentum of that dive and make sure you land perfectly vertical when you hit the water.
So we've seen some good 205Bs now. 72 even for Bramley. He's having a very solid competition. 2/3 of the way through. Opportunity to bounce back here. The hardest dive of his 6. Briadam Herrera.
And that's disappointing for him again. These are tricky dives, and I think right now the goal for him is to just get these under his belt, get a little bit more comfortable and confident competing them.
Mentioned last year lost due to an injury and a medical redshirt. So still finding that rhythm, which he was ACC Men's Diver of the Year across his junior season. Seen him across the years a couple times here in Austin. When he's on, one of the best in the country, but having some struggles today. Greg Duncan, inward 2.5 somersault pike. Duncan was in 5th after half the competition. What does he have here?
Wow, a beautiful dive. Because he's a little bit taller and he has long legs, his pike position in the air looks that much more impressive. Looks very polished, really graceful at the same time, which is something the judges are looking for and going to reward, and a terrific entry as well to boot.
All 7s outside of the 2, 7.5, 63 even for Greg Duncan. 2 divers from Purdue diving well thus far this evening. David Hoffer. Reverse 2.5 somersault pike. Last dive was his best scoring thus far. What does he have here for the 4th?
Oh, what a great dive. You could hear actually when he was on the end of the diving board, he was a little off rhythm. It doesn't seem to impact him at all. Stays calm with it, gets into a great pike, stays aggressive, and still manages to pull off an excellent dive.
All 7.5s, 1.7, 67.50. Hoffer trailing Bramley currently. This the hardest dive DD-wise we have seen thus far. The reverse 3.5 somersault tuck from Colin Zhang.
Oh, what a letdown, because that was so phenomenal in the air. Perfect takeoff from the diving board. He comes off the diving board at the perfect angle to get the momentum he needs, the height he needs, and unfortunately holds on to that tuck way too long.
Judges seeing it the same way. 4s, a 4.5, and the 3.5. 42 for Zhang. So a window now for Jordan Windle after the dive from Hernandez to continue to open up that gap. They've gone to 20 points after round 3. Hernandez, a DD of 3.4 on this 407C.
Wow, that's his best dive so far of the competition. He's going to be happy to hopefully turn this into a little bit more momentum as he heads into the back half of his list. Again, probably flips faster than almost anybody in this competition, so making a difficult dive like that isn't the problem. It's a matter of controlling it, and he's able to there.
Solid scores, 5 7.5s, 2 8s for a 76.50. We'll move Hernandez up into 5th. Windle was the leader after 3. This is the dive you talked about. The 109C, the hardest dive of the 6, a DD of 3.8.
Ah, you know what? That's great. He'll take it. Matt Scoggin looks happy with that. That is an incredibly difficult dive. He had the opportunity to really nail that dive, frankly. Makes that front 4.5 so easily, just reaches under. You can almost see the angle that he's reaching for when he's entering the water. He's a little bit under, like he's reaching more towards the wall. So he lets it over rotate just a hair, but he can't be disappointed with where he's at this point in the season, competing it like that.
2 4.5s, 2 5.5s, and 3 6s puts him at 289 even after the 64.60. Windle still leading the competition. 2 rounds left to decide a champion in the men's 3-meter. 20 points after round 3, so that's closed a little bit. Bramley having a good competition thus far.
Absolutely. Windle stumbled a little bit there on his front 4.5. The difficulty of that dive was able to keep him in the lead, but Bramley and Hoffer have been the most consistent athletes so far in this event.
2 rounds left. Can Jordan Windle bring it home? Sophomore from the University of Texas who has such an incredible story. Born in Cambodia. See the Cambodian flag on his tricep when he comes up. Was adopted by his dad, Jerry. Lived in an orphanage until he was 2. Got into diving when he was in 2nd grade and has ridden that all the way to what he's accomplished thus far. Sam Thornton will kick off round 5. DD of 3.4. He'll close out his competition with his 2 hardest dives as the 407C.
Wow, that was a great dive for him. The key to this dive is making sure you keep your body weight over the diving board enough so that when you take off, you're able to get the momentum you need to complete it. A little bit over-rotated, but a solid inward 3.5 for him.
6 6.5 is 62.60 for Thornton. Heads up. Ben Bramley has had a very solid competition. The freshman from Purdue was in 2nd place. After round 4, his best dive was his last. It scored a 72. What does he have here?
A reverse 2.5 pike, and he's on fire tonight. He's having himself a day. A little bit lower DD than what we're going to see from some other divers. So he's got to nail it, and his entry has been phenomenal in every single dive we've seen from him.
7.5s, 8s, and 8.5. 72 will be the score for dive 5, puts him at 346.80. So can he close that gap on Jordan Windle? Can anybody else jump up in? Briadam Herrera, his 5th dive, 107B.
See, and that's more the Briadam Herrera we're accustomed to seeing. That's a dive he could do in his sleep. A front 3.5 pike. He's so confident, no concerns on this dive. Comes out, has all day to reach for the water and make sure he can get a solid entry. His best dive so far.
7.5s for Herrera, 68.20. It's Greg Duncan. This is his hardest dive, along with his 3rd, a DD of 3.5.
I think I mentioned it earlier during the women's competition. Some people are just excellent at twisting, and he's one of them. Beautiful twisting position in the air. Knows exactly where he is, so he has the right timing of coming out of that twist and squaring up his body to reach for the water.
All 7s and 1/6, a very good looking dive, 73.50 for Greg Duncan. David Hoffer came into this round in 3rd place. Doesn't have the DD as you mentioned. Some of the other competitors, this even 3.0 has 4 dives that are at a 3.0.
You know what? He may have slightly lower DD compared to some of the other athletes, but he is consistent. He isn't going to miss, and if he does, it's not by much. A little bit of an over-rotation causing that splash that you see, but certainly not a miss.
So a 61.50 for Hoffer. Colin Zhang. Inward 3.5 somersault tuck.
Again, he's going to be a few of these dives. He's more than capable of making that dive all the way around. Instead, a little bit sluggish, comes out and reaches for the water instead of reaching under like he needs to and can't quite make it there.
54.40, saw that great dive in round number 2, scored an 81. But scores lower since. falling back on the leaderboard. Can Hernandez jump up the leaderboard? This dive gives him an opportunity. It's the same dive we saw from Wendell in round 4, 109C.
Oh, he's almost a blur. Like, he almost just rotates so fast, you can't even see him. You wouldn't even be able to count how many flips he's doing. So front 4.5, absolutely incredible. Needs to work on controlling it just a little bit and his timing on coming out of that tuck in order to get some of those big scores.
Hernandez at 299.35, current leader. After the 4 rounds, forward 2.5 somersault, 2 twist pike for Jordan Wendell.
Oh, now at this point, he's hit his sweet spot. He is so confident in these last few dives. Front 2.5 with 2 twists. Completes the dive above the 3-meter board, which means he has plenty of time to nail that entry. Unbelievable.
Finished 5th at last year's NCAA championship. Won the 3-meter event at the Big 12 Championships. Won this event at the 2017 UT Diving Invitational. He's well on his way to doing such again. And he's well clear now. 30-plus points over the duo from Purdue. Hoffer in 4th, Zhang down to 5th with 1 dive left from each competitor.
Absolutely, and this is now Wendell's to lose. He ends on a very comfortable dive for him. I don't think he's worried now. He's looking to just cap this off and see how high he's able to score.
Thornton will close out his day of competition. The forward 2.5 somersault, 2 twist pike.
What an excellent dive. Great way. He's going to be really excited to finish off his list with that double out. Great height off of the diving board. I think the toughest part for some of these divers is to keep a tight position when they have so much going on, and he's able to do so.
74.80 will close out the day for the senior from Texas A&M. Ben Bramley has had a very nice competition.
He has. I have been so impressed with this freshman. He looks so calm and composed. Oh, and again, another terrific entry. I'm not sure on his hurdle. It looked for a second like his knee almost buckled, but I could be entirely wrong because he didn't seem completely phased at all by it. Finishes what is probably one of the best 3-meter lists he's put together.
413.45. So trailing Wendell and probably unable to make up that gap, but very solid effort could put him in 2nd place. Priadam Herrera close things out with a 53.37D.
And this was his best dive in prelims, and again, probably going to be his best scoring dive in the finals. The key to this dive is making sure you're coming off of the diving board in the perfect angle in order to kind of stall that rotation and give yourself enough time to complete that many twists without over-rotating, and he's beautiful at executing that.
So ends on a high note, does Herrera. Hopefully see him tomorrow in the platform competition. 356.60. Greg Duncan was in 3rd place. Can he catch teammate Ben Bramley?
If he could, this would be the dive to do it. His best dive in prelims, high degree of difficulty with a 3.4. Oh, that might be able to do it. It'll get him close. That's for sure. Really excellent diving coming out of the Purdue men tonight. Just really comfortable on the end of that board, gets everything out of it in order to complete that double out with ease.
Historically has scored just over 70 on this dive. And he does much better there, 76.50. So Duncan happy with that, but still behind teammate Hoffer will close out his day. Reverse 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist pike.
He has a good amount of ground to cover on this in order to make it into that top 3 and catch these gentlemen from Purdue.
61.88 is the best he has ever scored on this dive.
Oh, I respect him for even going for it after that hurdle. That was, you're going to see it on this replay. He was all over the end of the diving board. Can't even move his arms, just trying to catch himself. Toes are dangling over, and that's a really difficult dive to do when you have 0 hurdle behind you. Some divers would have just jumped in the pool. I give this guy a lot of credit for at least going for it. That's tough.
Reflected in the scores, 19.80. But props to Hoffer.
Yeah, and he's
going for it
disappointed,
still.
as he should be. He had put together, strung together 5 beautiful dives prior to that. That's a frustrating way to end the dive. Again, just something that he can take and learn from.
Zhang will end his dive list with his hardest dive, DD of 3.8. What does the senior from Tennessee have?
And he didn't compete this dive in prelims. Similar to Jordan Windle, he decided to save it for finals. He's just a little bit off tonight. His timing is a little off. Really strong and powerful, but hangs on far too long. Doesn't exactly know where he is and when to reach for the water. So completely over-rotates it.
The Zhang Windle battle was great yesterday, as he has an off day here, 340.40, but look forward to seeing both of those, 2 of the best in the country on platform. See them tomorrow morning. 2 dives left. Juan Hernandez will close things out.
This is amazing to me. This is the most difficult dive in the competition. A front 2.5 with 3 twists. No one else here has competed it, or no one else here might even be able to complete this dive.
3.9, an absolutely massive DD.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I don't mean to laugh. I'm just so impressed and so baffled that he's able to make such difficult dives look so simple. He's just so strong. Look at that. Completes 3 twists, plenty of time to get an excellent entry. He should be at least happy to end on that note.
And Hernandez, who has been playing from behind, playing catch up on the leaderboard all day, that one an absolutely massive 89.70 will put him up into 3rd place. So it's Windle's competition to close out and win. A nice job by Hernandez to close out his day. This 405B, nice easy one to get him into the clubhouse.
It is. It's just a dive he feels incredibly comfortable on. He's been competing it for years. He wants to finish with something he knows when it matters, he can hit. And he does. That might be the best list of 6 dives I've ever seen Jordan Windle put together. And that's saying something, because he is an excellent diver and has been for years. But I don't know if I've seen that. Wow, absolutely incredible.
So Jordan Windle, the champion here on the 3-meter boards, bounces back from 2nd place finish yesterday, and you just heard it from Kat, puts together a great sequence of 6 dives to take home the title. Bramley and Duncan from Purdue round out 2nd and 3rd. Hernandez closes out strong in 4th. We'll come back here in a moment and speak with the champion, Jordan Windle.